Hey everyone, hi, welcome back. Actually, I'm welcoming myself back in a weird way because it's been a couple of days. So here's what's going on. I have been really sick. We've done COVID tests, and they've come back negative. So it was determined that I have some sort of sinus infection, which I was at peak sickness, I think Tuesday evening. I filmed my tag video, and then I got very, very sick, and I didn't do anything for a couple of days. I am on a course of antibiotics, and now I'm feeling well enough to do a video, and just because I'm sick, my brain doesn't turn off. I also have a little guest here, so I have still been reading, and so what today is I'm wrapping up what I read this week, but if there are a couple more cuts than normal, it's because I need to stop and blow my nose, which I just don't want to do, include in a video. But I really wanted to talk about what I read, so that's what I'm doing today, and I'm so glad that you joined me. Okay, so this was a really fun reading week. It was a lot of little short bites. I am participating in Shorty September with Past Story Time, and I'll link their channel below. And so part of that, actually almost all of these books have to do with Past Story Time's Shorty September. So the first book I finished, which I talked about in my What's Cheering Me Up Right Now video, which is Lysistrata. This is a play that was first performed in 411 BC. Ooh, you okay, Bubba? And it is about the premise is that the women are upset that the men continue to fight in order to solve their problems, and within that fighting, the women are losing their sons, they're not around their husbands, and they're tired of it. So Lysistrata cooks up a plan to withhold lovemaking from the husbands or from the men until they change their ways. And so they use that as a tactic to change their ways. And one of my favorite characters was Cleonike. I hope I'm saying that right, or Cleonike. Because so Lysistrata is like, I have this plan. My plan is to withhold affection from our husbands. And what I thought was going to happen was that Cleonike was going to be like, yeah, that sounds great. But rather what happens is that Cleonike goes, oh no, we can't do that. And that was just so funny to me, that the women sort of suffered just as much as the men through this process of withholding affection. And Cleonike was the perfect character foil to Lysistrata because she was really funny, and she added a lot of humor. And Aristophanes, I always have to look when I say that, Aristophanes has just wonderful comedic timing, and I really got the comedic timing all throughout the book, and this was just a really fantastic read, and I highly recommend it. If that premise sounds good to you, really fun, and I thought it would be really difficult, but it wasn't. It was a really, really, really easy read. Okay, now my next one, which I'm probably not going to talk about because I haven't finished, is Witch Child by Celia Rees. I am about halfway through. I have thoughts, but I think I'm going to hold out until I finish the book. The premise is that Mary grew up in a family of witches in the 1800s, and she kind of is on her own, and I'll explain it more when I finish, because I really haven't finished gathering my thoughts, and I'm only about halfway through. But I stopped reading it, so that might be kind of telling about how I felt about the book. So, as I set Witch Child aside, I finished The Red Pony by John Steinbeck. This was published, I have little notes on the back, this was published in 1937, and it is the story of a little boy, he's 10 years old, named Jody, who's living in the Salinas area in California, which is a fertile farmland. He's living in a ranch, and he is gifted a red pony. And through the events, Jody learns about, it's really a coming of age story, even though he's 10 years old, because he learns about the life of an adult in regards to, like, sometimes adults make promises that they can't keep. Sometimes adults disappoint you, and sometimes things happen where you have really, really big emotions that you have to work through. This was an interesting read because it's split into 4 chapters, and I finished the first chapter, and I thought the second chapter was going to build on that. I thought I was going to get a normal story arc with the, now my words are failing me. Give me 1 second to gather my thoughts and to check my camera. The word I was searching for was exposition. So I thought that this book would give me the exposition, the rising action, the climax, falling action, and conclusion, and that's not what this book is. This is an episodic novella. So each short story almost feels like a little episode, and what I thought this was akin to was almost like the Andy Griffith show, because just like Opie in the Andy Griffith show, where he has these interactions with adults and he learns more about what it means to be a human and an adult in every episode that features Opie, or if it's about Opie in the Andy Griffith show. That's kind of what The Red Pony read like, but slightly more violent than the Andy Griffith show and slightly more graphic than the Andy Griffith show. But I didn't know that it was an episodic novella, so I was really expecting to get this beautiful, the normal arc of a story, and I didn't get that at all, so I was a little bit let down because of it. However, I really understand if teachers were to read this with high school students or with even middle school students. There's just a ton of really, really rich writing in here. And if you know going in that this is an episodic novella, I think you wouldn't be let down as much as I was. The descriptions of the ranch is beautiful. The descriptions are beautiful. Steinbeck is clearly a thoughtful and immersive writer. I felt like I was seeing and smelling all of the sights and sounds that he was describing, and it was really an interesting read, and I'm still thinking about it, which means that there was a lot to mull over. I just, again, was slightly disappointed that it didn't follow a normal, story arc, and it really could have. I felt like there was a lot of opportunity. And actually, this, The Red Pony, was published as 4 separate stories, and then they were bound together as a novella and illustrated by someone when it was first published. But I didn't know all of that going in, so I thought, again, I was going to get the story that I didn't. So maybe that was me, a little bit of me, maybe it's a little bit of the book. Hold a second, I got a cough. I am on the mend. Okay, the next book I read while I was trying to recover and take it easy. It's very difficult for me to take it easy. And I read Bridge to Terabithia, which was written by Katherine Paterson, and it was published in 1977. It's a Newbery Award-winning book, which means that it contributed to the canon of children's literature in some way, and it won the award for that year. So essentially, it's known as the best kids book that was published of that year, and I could definitely see why it is so well loved among readers and why it stands out as a story. So this is about, again, I have my little notes. This is about Jesse, who is the only boy in a family of 5, and he lives in a rural town where really nothing happens, and everybody has the same hobby of watching sports on TV, and it really just reminded me of that sort of small town feel that Jesse is growing up in. And his goal for that year is to become the fastest runner in 5th grade. So yeah, he's about 10, 11. And early on in the story, a girl moves next door. Her name is Leslie, and he befriends her. And she is a reader. She's more cultured than anyone else in the town. They don't have a television in her home, and her parents in the book are described as hippies. One moment again. Okay, sorry y'all. I'm not going to apologize for being sick. I really want to be here. This is what I want to do. And I've been thinking about these books, and I've been thinking about talking with you about these books. So that's what I'm here doing today. Even if I'm not at 100, this is 100% what I want to do. Okay, so Leslie and Jesse form a friendship, and she teaches him all about imagination, using your imagination, and she talks about literature and feeling different. And the climax of this book is really heart-wrenching. It broke my heart. I read this in one day and pretty much in one sitting, and I really had to catch my breath because I was so weepy about it. It just was really sad. However, it was a great book. It was really, really good, and it was about friendship at the core. And I really love books about friendship and about loving somebody as a friend, and about who they are. So this was just a fantastic read. If this has been on your to be read list, I would highly recommend picking it up. Very short book, and probably could read it in one sitting, and definitely worth all of the tears that I shed over it. Alright, the next book I actually finished this morning, and it is From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler, and it's by E.L. Konigsburg, who wrote the book and also illustrated the book. I made a whole video about Margaret Atwood, who wrote and illustrated a children's book, which I didn't think worked very well, but Konigsburg's writing and story that she told definitely made up for maybe the artistic talents that she lacked in. Some of her characters were a little bit stiff, and the style wasn't my favorite, but it didn't really take away from the story. It didn't offend me in the way that Margaret Atwood's book did. So this was published in 1967. It also won the Newbery Award, which means that it was arguably the best kids book written of that year, at least according to the folks awarding the Newbery. And this is the story of Claudia and her brother Jamie, and they run away to the Metropolitan Museum in New York. And, one sec, I haven't projected this much since Tuesday, so I'm filming this Friday morning. Typically I just film and put up the video. So the Jamie and Claudia, Claudia, who is I think 11 or 12, and Jamie, who's a few years younger, they run away to the museum, Metropolitan Museum, and they hide out there. They camp out there. They have this whole system of how they don't get caught, and while they're there, Claudia's feeling very underappreciated in her life, and she wants to have, an adventure. She wants to be appreciated. She wants to get away from her life in many ways. She's smart and very cultured little girl, privileged in many ways, but she just, she doesn't see that. She's like, I have to empty the trash and I'm just so tired of it. And so she gets her and her little brother and herself to run away, and again they stay in a museum. What's interesting about this book is that very early on, Mrs. Frankweiler is telling the story to someone named Saxonburg, and so she's telling, Miss Frankweiler is telling Claudia and Jamie's story, and Mrs. Frankweiler kind of has this snarky personality that comes through as she's writing this letter to Saxonburg, and she's got her little 2 cents that she puts in as she's narrating Claudia and Jamie's story. So I thought that Konigsburg tried to achieve more than Paterson in something like A Bridge to Terabithia, and she was very, very successful. While Claudia and Jamie are at the museum, they become obsessed with a sculpture, possibly by Michelangelo, and they make it their mission to find out whether the sculpture was actually done by Michelangelo or if it wasn't. And that's where the story takes off. And again, it's really a very, very good book. There's a lot of references to art and New York, which is, it really worked. Konigsburg was, you can tell, is clearly a very intelligent person, and she wrote squarely for her audience. So I didn't feel like she was writing above their heads, or she wasn't trying to write for their audience, which makes sometimes it feel like you're talking down to a kid. It was sort of squarely right in the middle. She can really just talk directly to kids, but it was still enjoyable for me as an adult. So this was really, really good. Okay, the last 2 are picture books, so I know this isn't for everyone, but if you want to come along with me, you can. And I read these with my son, and they are on, actually, these 4 are on my 1001 children's books you must read before you grow up, and then these 2 books, picture books, are on the list as well. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm reading through the 1001 children's books you must read before you grow up. I'm currently building a Goodreads list. I've cataloged 467 books so far, but again, I've been a little ill, so I haven't made as much progress on cataloging the books as I want, but that is coming soon. That's what I keep telling myself, soon. Okay, so the books I'm going to be talking about are the first one. What? So the first book I'm going to be talking about is The Little Engine That Could by Watty Piper. This is the story about a train with all these goodies that get stuck at the bottom of a hill. The train and its passengers, clowns and dolls, asks help from 3 other trains to help them get over the hill. The 3 trains deny those requests, and finally a small little engine decides to help out the train that's stuck at the bottom of the hill, and she has this mantra of I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, which helps her achieve her goal of getting the train over the hill. And this was published in 1930. They have updated versions. So this is by the updated versions. So this is by George. The illustrations by this one is by George and Doris Hauman. The original illustrations were done by Lois Lenski, which I can't find a copy of that. And then this is an updated version by Dan Santat, who is a illustrator living today and working in the publishing industry, and he did this beautiful copy. One of the things that I thought was really, really interesting about the book, not only was the mantra I think I can is very, very sweet for little kids, but it was when I read the review on it, the reviewer in my reference book said that this might be the first or the only anthropomorphized female train, because a lot of trains that you see now in the picture book illustrating business are typically male. And at first I was like, how did they know it was a female? And then I reread it with my son, and it indeed has all of these references as she. So she is our hero. The little engine that could is a she, and she is our hero of the book. So I thought that was really interesting, and it also predates Thomas the Tank Engine. So I don't know why. I was curious as to why trains end up being more of a boy thing. Not that I think toys are gendered necessarily, but they tend to be more boy heavy, even though one of the first and definitely one of the most famous trains was a girl. Actually, both of them are girls. The one that gets stuck at the bottom of the hill and the train that helps them, the little engine that could, is also a she. So I thought that was very interesting and worth sharing. The second book is The Story of Babar. I also read this with my son. It's done by Jean De Brunhoff. Sorry if I'm butchering that, who wrote and illustrated this picture book. And when I read this a year and a half ago, when I tried to tackle the list then, at the beginning of the story, Babar's mother dies, and I thought that was really inappropriate for children to talk about death. And then as I have reflected on that initial reaction, I remember that death was something that families experience in a closer contacted way, because the idea of people dying in hospitals is very modern. For most of our society, for most of our history, deaths often happened in the home, and it was something that children witnessed, and it was not unusual. Whereas nowadays, I think most of the time you would maybe only see a dead body if you are at a funeral. And so that was kind of interesting. So here I was reading this book to my son, and Babar's mother dies, the second page or something, and he was like, "What's death?" And I was able to explain to him that death is when somebody goes away forever, and we were able to have that conversation, which is what I think books ought to be, even between a mother and a child. So I was really thankful to have read this to my son, who is 5, and to explain to him what death is, and to really introduce him to that idea that is natural, and that happens to everybody. And the story goes, so Babar's mother dies, he runs away to the city, he meets a woman who dresses him in nice clothing and educates him, and then he ends up going, his cousins, I believe, Arthur and Celeste, come and fetch him, find him, take him back to his original land with all of the elephants, where they crown him king, and he lives happily ever after with Celeste. Babar and Celeste get married, and they live happily ever after, essentially. At the time, this was published in 1933, at the time it was unusual because of the size. It was printed as, they reproduced with large lithographs, so the printing process was unusual. It was also really, really large. And I'll show you. Sometimes the action of the story was kind of unusual for little kids as well. So these elephants are not 3 elephants. They are an elephant that is far away and then coming more into the foreground of the picture. And so, it takes a keen eye, it takes some brain power even to interpret the illustrations. There's another one where it's that I wanted to show. So this one is like the elephant. There aren't 3 elephants riding on the elevator. The elephant, Babar, is riding up the elevator and then coming down. And that was a bit unusual for the time, which I thought was very, very interesting. But yeah, my son really loved this book. He loved The Little Engine That Could. And it's been really, really fun to experience these picture books that I love with my son, who now has the attention span to sit for something like this. And that is it. That was my reading. It was a wonderful and productive reading week. Tell me what you've read this week. What have you been working on? Your favorite reads, your least favorite reads. And yeah, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really, really appreciate it, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye, guys.